Summer in the City. Alex Aster's New York romance. New York City in the summertime. The air is thick with heat, the streets shimmer with possibility, and every corner hums with the promise of a story waiting to be told. For Elle, a 27-year-old screenwriter caught in the grip of writer's block, this summer is her last chance. A chance to save her career, her dreams, and maybe, though she doesn't know it yet, her heart. This is Summer in the City, Part 1, The Writer Who Couldn't Write. Elle had always thought of stories as oxygen. Since she was a teenager, screenplays had been her way of making sense of the world. Scribbled scenes in notebooks, dialogue that leapt off the page, characters that felt more alive than the people around her. And now she finally had the chance of a lifetime. A big-budget movie set in New York City. Her name on the script, her story on the screen. But there was one tiny problem. She couldn't write a single word. For months, Elle had been staring at the same blinking cursor, the same blank pages, the same cruel countdown toward her deadline. The producers wanted the screenplay by the end of the summer. Every day she failed to type, the dream slipped further from her grasp. So, in a last-ditch attempt at inspiration, Elle did the one thing she swore she'd never do again. She packed her bags, swallowed her pride, and returned to New York City. Part 2, back to the city that broke her. The city greeted her like an old flame she couldn't quite forget. The screech of subway brakes, the smell of roasted peanuts on the corner, the chaotic rush of taxis, horns, laughter, and arguments spilling into the summer night. Her new apartment was a miracle. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched toward a skyline painted with sunlight and steel. From her balcony, she could trace the outline of the Empire State Building. Downstairs, a tiny coffee shop promised endless iced lattes and people watching. It was the perfect setup, the kind of place any writer would kill to have. She told herself, "This is it. This is where the words will finally come." But the city had one more surprise waiting. Because across the hall, her new neighbor wasn't a stranger. It was Parker Warren. Part 3. The neighbor from her past 2 years ago, in a stairwell at a party, Elle and Parker had collided. Sparks had flown, quite literally, and one impulsive hookup later, she swore she'd never see him again. Parker Warren, the tech world's billionaire bachelor, the man who built empires out of apps and algorithms, the man plastered on the cover of every business magazine, the man who, after their one night together, managed to turn their spark into a full-fledged enemy's flame. Now, here he was, living across the hall. When Elle saw him again, leaning casually in his doorway, an expensive suit discarded for a t-shirt that still managed to look custom-tailored, her stomach twisted, not with longing, but with irritation. "Of course it's you," she muttered. "Good to see you too, Elle," he said, that smug grin tugging at his lips. Enemies. Definitely enemies. Part 4. Sparks and Screens. But something unexpected happened. That night, furious from the encounter, Elle sat down at her laptop. She wrote about Parker, the arrogance in his smile, the maddening confidence, the way he made her want to scream and laugh all at once. The words poured out, faster than they had in months. By morning, she had pages, real pages. And with a shock, Elle realized the truth. Her enemy was her muse. The more she clashed with Parker, the more inspired she became. Their banter, their silent battles in the hallway, even their petty arguments over noise or neighbors, it all fueled her screen. It was twisted, infuriating, but it worked. Part 5. Opposites at war. Elle and Parker couldn't have been more different. She was anonymous. She hid behind her scripts, behind her words, behind the safety of knowing no one was watching. Parker was everywhere. His face in glossy magazines, his name on television. His presence demanded attention, like the city itself bowed to his will. She stayed within her self-declared 5-block radius, her emotional comfort zone. He thrived on red carpet events, billion-dollar deals, and champagne toasts in rooms she'd never dare enter. They should have stayed on opposite sides of the wall. But fate had other plans. Part 6, The Deal. Parker had his own problem. His company was in the middle of a precarious acquisition, and the media was circling like vultures. Investors wanted reassurance. Headlines needed calming. What he needed was a relationship. Something buzzy, something that made him look grounded, relatable. And Elle? She needed to finish her screenplay before the end of summer. The movie required scenes all across New York City. Central Park, Times Square, hidden diners, glittering rooftops. She couldn't do it alone. So the deal was struck. One summer, one agreement, one fake relationship. They'd spend time together. He'd get the press coverage he needed. She'd get the city adventures her movie demanded. It was all business, all pretend, promise. But as everyone knows, pretend has a way of turning real. Part 7, Summer in the City. New York came alive for them. They strolled through Central Park where the sun dappled through the leaves and children's laughter echoed from the playgrounds. They devoured slices of pizza so greasy it dripped down their wrists, laughing as they tried to fold the paper plates into makeshift shields. They danced beneath rooftop lights strung across the skyline, the city pulsing below like a heartbeat. They rode the subway at midnight, shoulder to shoulder, as street performers strummed guitars and strangers swayed to the music. For Elle, it was rediscovering the city she once fled. For Parker, it was seeing the city not from boardrooms and balconies, but from sidewalks and coffee shops, hand in hand with someone who refused to be impressed by his billions. And somewhere between the laughs, the late-night fights, and the shared slices of cheesecake at 2 a.m., the line between pretend and reality blurred. Part 8, Hearts on the Line. Elle knew better than to believe in happy endings. Summers always ended. Agreements always expire. She told herself, this is temporary. This is pretend. Don't fall. But falling was inevitable, because behind Parker's perfect suits and billion-dollar smile was a man who listened when she ranted about her characters. A man who stayed up with her through nights of writing, tossing out bad one-liners just to make her laugh. And behind Elle's sarcasm and stubbornness was a woman who challenged him, who didn't care about his fortune or his fame, who reminded him what it meant to be real. Enemies, lovers, enemies again, and something else entirely. Part 9, The Promise. By the end of the summer, Elle's screenplay was almost done. Pages full of heart, humor, sour, and a city captured in all its messy, magical glory. Parker's company was steady, the acquisition underway, the headlines buzzing with their romance. It should have been enough. Their deal had worked, their goals achieved. But as the final days of August bled into September, the promise they'd made haunted them both. It's all pretend. Promise. Except for every look, every touch, every kiss. They weren't pretending anymore. And when the summer ended, the question remained, would they? Warm and wistful. In a city that never sleeps, love writes its own script. Sometimes messy, sometimes unexpected, always unforgettable. This is Alex Aster's Summer in the City, a swoony, fast-paced rom-com about enemies, lovers, and the summer that changed everything. Because summers always end, but some stories last forever.